Right now, I want to welcome to the program the star, the subject of the NRA's latest ad. Kimberly Weeks is with us. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
Yeah, it is. It's my privilege and a pleasure to be able to talk with you. Before we get started, I want folks to see your ad. I know there are a couple of versions that are running. There's a 30-second version. There's a 90-second version. I want folks to see the longer version, and then I want to talk with you about it. Is that all right?
Sure thing.
All right.
Carrying
Let's
concealed
let folks
isn't for
take
everyone.
a look and a listen.
It definitely wasn't for me up until a few years ago. My name is Kimberly Weeks, and I can tell you that violent crimes do happen. My apartment in college was fairly close to campus. We were on a ground floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, very safe. When we signed our lease, they said, we have absolutely 0 crime reports that have happened here. It's a very safe neighborhood. In the early morning hours of May 12th, 2006, I was awakened by a stranger who was holding me down with a shirt covering my face. And he was saying, "Shut up, don't say anything, just stay quiet." He stayed in my apartment for the next 2 hours and sexually assaulted me. And at 20 years old, I had to lay there thinking about how I was going to die. Law enforcement in my case was fantastic, but they were there after the crime was committed. I would say that my fear of guns disappeared when I got my second chance at my life. Protecting myself is my right. Michael Bloomberg would like to say that he is doing this to make everyone safer. Unfortunately, Michael Bloomberg is not making me safer. If my right to self-protection is taken away, that leaves me very, very vulnerable and feeling very scared once again. I know how best to defend myself. Mr. Bloomberg, you do not have the right to tell me how to defend myself.
That the ad from Kimberly Weeks, who is with us, and Kim. First of all, on behalf of gun owners everywhere, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. Was it a difficult decision for you to make this ad?
Yes and no. I mean, it's been a long time coming, just because of what happened last year, and it was more of a decision, I think, to get involved in the gun battle at all than it was to help out the NRA and to give voice to not only just gun owners but victims like myself, because it is such a crime that's associated with this sense of shame and guilt that not a lot of people want to speak out about it, and it's tough to talk about sometimes, and it's tough to listen to.
Well, it is, but that's why I say I appreciate it and I admire you for doing this, because, look, this is ultimately what we are talking about, as you say, is the right to feel safe. And we can talk about it in these theoretical terms, but we're not talking about theoretical subjects. We're talking about real people. We're talking about, real lives at stake here. And you not being able to make that decision, to have somebody from outside of state or somebody who feels like they're your better somehow, to say, Kimberly, listen, you're really going to be better off if you don't have a gun. I mean, don't you know that women are X percent more likely to be harmed if they have a gun in the house than helped by that gun? So we're going to make that decision for you because clearly you aren't going to make the right decision.
Right. I mean, I'm capable of making every other decision in my life. Why should this one be out of my hands? I mean, we see so many political ads during this time of year that they just get lost among all the other things in our day-to-day life. But I hope that at least some people pay attention to this, because I'm not an actress and I'm not just, there to tell my story. It's really, this is from the heart, and this absolutely impacts me and my family and gun owners across America. So I really hope that people listen to this.
Well, I think that they will. And I said earlier in the program that one of the things that I think makes this ad stand out is that you're not an actress. I mean, we see so many political ads where it's very clearly somebody being paid to look into the camera and say, boy, let me talk about health care. And this ad is not that at all. It is, it's hard to turn away from. And, I want to ask you as well, because clearly women have become one of the key fronts in the gun control debate. Moms in particular, we've got, Moms Demand Action and Shannon Watts. And I think I see this, I call it the otherizing of women who own guns, this sort of cultural pressure to not own guns. It goes far beyond Michael Bloomberg.
Right.
But the idea being that you are you're not being a good woman, you're not being a good mom
Right.
if you are a gun owner. Do you see that as well, Kim?
It's a sit down and shut up mentality. You're going to do what you're told, or you just get labeled as this crazy right-wing nut and all of these other things. But, I'm exactly the person that people like Bloomberg or Moms Demand Action or these other gun-controlled groups don't want you to hear about. I could be your daughter or your sister or your wife or your mother or your friend. And what happened to me, sadly, in this country is not uncommon. It could happen to you or someone else that you know. I choose to concealed carry because that's how I know best to defend myself, my family, and I'm really just exercising my right to choose. I'm not saying everyone needs to own a gun or carry concealed. I'm just asking that they don't take that right away from me.
What, Kim, what has been the response? I know the ad just started running, but have you heard from friends, from family members who've had a chance to see the ad?
I have an incredible support system, luckily. Just as a little bit of background, the assault itself happened back in 2006. I'm in Greeley, Colorado, which is about an hour north of Denver or so. It's fairly college community, but pretty eclectic group up here. And I made my best friends, my family's here. So everyone that I have grown up with has gone through this with me. And the morning of my assault was one where I felt completely alone. No matter how many people are backing me, no matter how many people are around or, sleeping in another room in my apartment, I was completely alone. So for these ads to come out and feel this push, not only in just the gun owners community, but the sexual assault advocacy community, I think has been really staggering, and I think it's only going to get more so from here.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, this ad is directed at Michael Bloomberg. At least he's the person you're talking to. But as you say, you live in Colorado, a state where Michael Bloomberg has spent a lot of money and a lot of time to try to get gun control laws passed, and then to try to support the politicians who passed it. There's a U.S. Senate race this year. There's obviously the governor's race. We got state legislative races. Kimberly, how fired up are gun owners in Colorado? How active are you right now in the elections?
It's crazy. I did not have a lot to do with politics prior to this. I will preface it with that. Last year when my home state became this battleground for the Second Amendment rights, I knew it was an issue that I couldn't let someone else fight for me. I told a room full of elected officials about my experience, and it wasn't just the rape itself, but, my long road back to a cautious sense of safety. So I was a current graduate student at UNC and carrying concealed, and it was literally just minutes away from where the attack occurred. So it gave me the ability to continue to pursue my education, but the very idea that there's this group of people trying to strip me of that right altogether was enough to make me get up off my couch and get involved in a political arena that I'd have almost no prior involvement with. So, myself and the other women and men that I testified with alongside were ignored on the night of that hearing, but we all know how that ended up for three of them with the recalls last fall. So when it comes to, taking on Bloomberg and the Bloombergs of the world, as cliche as it sounds, I realize what's happening here is truly a battle of David and Goliath. We have a hypocritical billionaire that couldn't care less about my safety or how I choose to protect my family, yet he's pushing his groups and the politicians in his back pocket to make decisions that defy not only the Constitution, but honestly, basic common sense. Infringing upon my rights, however big or small, isn't okay, and I am not going to sit on my couch in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, reporting the evil that someone else forced upon me ever again. I was victimized once by somebody who thought that their desires were more important than my life, and I can assure Mr. Bloomberg that was one time too many. I will not let him or this government legislate me into being a victim again.
Talking
I know
with
that was a lot,
Kimberly
but
Weeks.
I feel fired up, and I
No,
think
listen,
everybody else does too.
I'm glad to hear it. And listen, you always have a microphone here. I want you to know that. Unfortunately, there might be times where I have to say that we are almost out of time, and this is one of those times. But Kimberly, again, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for speaking up and speaking out.
Thank you so
It
much
was
for having me.
again a real privilege getting a chance to talk with you, and hope we can do this again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cam.
My pleasure. Kimberly Weeks with us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.